Hi friends, it's Mark Bartel from Tone King Amps, and I'm here with my latest creation. It's called the Falcon Grande. Now the Falcon Grande is similar to our Falcon model in that it goes after the kind of sounds you would expect from an amp from, say, the 50s or early 60s. So it's nice and fat and warm and round and not too glassy on top. And I've done a whole lot of engineering work here to come up with some innovations that I think make the Falcon Grande a really refined take on that kind of sound. So let's go over the features first and then plug in and hear what it sounds like. To begin, the Falcon Grande is a 20-watt amp with two 5881 output tubes, but you can use 6L6s if you like. It's got a built-in 12-inch speaker and an open back cabinet with a built-in acoustic lens that we'll talk about later. It's got a single channel preamp, just volume and tone, and a 3-position voicing switch. It's got both high and low gain inputs and a really nice 2-knob reverb inspired by the old outboard units of the 60s. It's got the built-in Ironman 2 attenuator with the reactive load and the whole bit, and it also comes with a 4-button foot switch to control the voicing selection and turn the reverb on and off. So now let's plug in and hear what it sounds like. I'm going to go through each of these 3 voicings, starting with the rhythm voicing, which I think sounds kind of maybe a little fatter than a deluxe reverb, maybe closer to a Brown Deluxe. So let's dial in a nice clean sound and take a listen. Switch over to the middle pickup position. Now I'm going to switch over to the low gain input and turn the volume control up to compensate and show you how that kind of fattens up the tone a little bit. Alright, now I'm going to switch over to the tweed voicing. Tweed voicing is inspired by the sound of, say a Tweed Deluxe, Tweed Basement. So it's great for anything from a nice fat clean sound to that tweed snarl we know and love. But let's start off with it set a little more for a little more on the clean side. Now I'm going to switch over to the high gain input, crank it up, and show you what it sounds like when it's set a little bit hotter. Now I'm going to switch over to the lead setting. Now the lead voicing is neat because it's not just for distortion. If you plug over to the low gain input and don't turn the volume control up too high, you can get almost a nice like 50s rock and roll kind of sound. And if you stay in the low input and turn the volume control up a little bit, you can get that kind of sound that seems to be clean and dirty at the same time. And as you would expect, if you switch over to the high gain input and crank it up, you're going to get a much hotter sound. But the nice thing about the Falcon Grande and how it differs from the Falcon is that it's never going to get too compressed. You know, you can plug a Les Paul into the high input, volume and tone all the way up, and it's not going to get too saggy and compressed. So let me plug this telly in and turn it all the way up. Volume and tone all the way up. Let's talk about the reverb a little bit. Now, the reverb circuit in the Grande is an entirely new circuit I designed that's inspired by the old outboard units of the 60s. And it's got both a mix and dwell control. Now, the dwell control determines the character of the reverb sound, and the mix control determines how much of it is mixed in with the dry signal. So if you turn the dwell control down, the reverb sound gets a little darker and a little more subtle. So let me dial in a clean sound here and demonstrate. I'm going to start off with the dwell set down about a quarter of the way up. Turn the mix up a little so you can hear it. I'm going to turn the dwell up to about 3/4 of the way up, and you'll see how it gets a little brighter and a little splashier. Now, if you like, you can turn the mix and dwell all the way up, both, and it can get a little over the top, but you can get a large amount of reverb. Now let's talk about the Iron Man 2 attenuator. Now, the Iron Man 2 attenuator built into the Grande is a fairly sophisticated unit that has a built-in reactive load so that the output stage of the amplifier responds the same way when it's driving the attenuator as it does when it's driving a real speaker load, so it preserves a nice feel of playing a cranked up amp. And in addition, it contains what I call volume compensation circuitry that adjusts for the way the ear perceives sound differently at different volume levels. So you put those together and it really preserves the experience of playing a cranked amp really well, even at very low volumes. You could turn it down to minus 36 dB and crank the amp up all the way, and you could play late at night in a home environment and not disturb anyone. The final thing I'd like to talk about is the cabinet design and the built-in acoustic lens. Now, I typically put a whole lot of effort into my cabinet designs because the cabinet is such a big part of what makes my amps sound and feel the way they do, and the Grande is no exception. But this time around, I came up with something kind of neat and new, which is this built-in acoustic lens, and the purpose of it is to eliminate that high-frequency beaming or ice pick effect, which causes the high frequencies to become very focused and very harshly bright at certain listening positions. And the neat thing about this design is that it not only eliminates the ice pick effect, but it does it without the side effects that you typically get with other methods like beam blockers or foam donuts that to me just seem to muddy up the sound and blur the attack. And this design works on a different principle, so it really gives you the opposite effect. It gives you a nice, lively, present sound anywhere in the room or in any acoustic environment. And that just makes it so much easier to get a great sound no matter where you're playing. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up here. This is the Falcon Grande. I had a whole lot of fun designing this amp, learned a lot, and I just really think it turned out great. And I hope you dig it as much as I do. Mark Bartel from Tone King Amps.